Hi, Mr. Green here again. I'm going to be taking you through another section of the waves topic of the GCSE Combined Science Physics paper. Today we're going to be talking about the uses of electromagnetic waves, and we're going to know the different uses of each type of electromagnetic wave. Please take that down as your title. Okay, start as we always do with a retrieval practice. If you could pause the video and attempt those 5 questions and restart when you'd like the answers. Okay, question 1. What's the EM spectrum? The EM spectrum can be defined as a continuous spectrum of all the possible wavelengths of electromagnetic waves. Name all 7 parts of the EM spectrum in order of increasing wavelength, so wavelength getting bigger, from gamma, X-rays, ultraviolet, visible, infrared, micro, then radio. What type of waves are EM waves? All EM waves are transverse waves. And what speed do all EM waves travel at? They all travel at the speed of light, which is 3 times 10 to the 8 meters per second. What 3 things can happen to an EM wave when it meets the boundary between 2 substances? Well, it can either be transmitted, reflected, or absorbed by the material. Our learning outcomes today are to state uses for each type of electromagnetic wave and to state why each wave is suitable for that use. So the electromagnetic spectrum has lots of different applications. It is a way of transferring energy over large distances. Each type of electromagnetic wave has different uses, and that's due to the properties they have based upon the wavelength. We're going to look at each electromagnetic wave in turn, discuss their uses, and answer some questions on those. So to start off, radio waves. Radio waves are electromagnetic waves with wavelengths that are longer than 1 meter. So any electromagnetic wave 1 meter or longer would be a radio wave. Our first use is communication and broadcasting. Each television station or radio station has a specific frequency they broadcast their information on. We then all have aerials that can pick up that signal and decode it into TV pictures or into audio. It's radio waves that are used to broadcast that message. It can also be used in the really complex science of magnetic resonance imaging, or as you may know it, the MRI scan. This uses radio waves to oscillate the atoms inside the human body and produce a picture like the one we can see there. Radio waves are really useful for communication because of their long wavelength. It allows something called diffraction to take place that you can see on the diagram. It also allows reflection from the Earth's ionosphere. This means the waves can reach round corners where other types of waves would not be able to. It can bounce off the ionosphere around the outside of the Earth and reflect back down onto the Earth. Diffraction means it spreads out when it comes to small gaps like above a hill. Next one are microwaves. Microwaves are waves with wavelengths between 1 millimeter and 1 meter. Microwaves can be used generally for microwave ovens. The microwaves heat up water molecules, so they get absorbed by water molecules inside the food. It then passes that energy, that thermal energy, onto the particles around it via conduction, and then the food itself heats up. Now, if the food contains no water, a microwave will be really ineffective at heating it. Microwaves get absorbed by water particles and not by the food particles. Mobile phones also use microwaves to communicate with what we call their base stations, so it sends a message to their base stations from microwaves. Mobile phones use around 1,000 times less power than a typical microwave oven, so they're not dangerous to us at all, and they emit radiation in all directions at a different wavelength than microwaves, so there's no real risk in using mobile phones. Microwaves are also used for satellite communications and Wi-Fi. This is because the wavelength means they can pass through the ionosphere, unlike radio waves. Any waves that are shorter than radio waves can pass through the ionosphere, but we'd use microwaves because they're the least harmful one. Okay, 6 questions there on radio and microwaves. Please pause the video and attempt to answer those questions. Okay, question 1. How long are radio waves there? Any EM wave longer than 1 meter would be a radio wave. You have 2 uses of radio waves. You can have communication and broadcasting, or MRI scans. Why can't radio waves be used for satellite communication? It's because the wave cannot pass through the ionosphere. It gets reflected back onto the surface of the Earth. What's the range of lengths for microwaves? Microwaves are between 1 millimeter and 1 meter. Two uses, we've got a few: heating food, mobile phones and satellite communication. How do microwaves heat up food? They heat up water molecules in the food, which passes that energy on to the food particles all around it. Next wave are infrared waves. Infrared waves are between 700 nanometers to a millimeter. Uses of infrared waves would be: it's the type of radiation we normally feel as heat coming from a fire. Infrared is emitted by any hot object and can be used in loads of different ways. Grills and barbecues would use infrared radiation to cook food, and most of the energy we get from the sun is infrared radiation. Infrared also can be used by thermal imaging cameras, and the best of thermal imaging cameras can even tell exactly what temperature a surface is just by the wavelength of radiation emitted. So it compares that wavelength of radiation to the infrared wave, and from that it can tell you the temperature. Because it's easily absorbed by the atmosphere and other objects, it's also used for short-range communications, like remote controls or short-range military radios. We don't worry about interference in other signals, or we can use optical fibers over short distances, so they're really useful for these short methods of communication. Visible light. They have a wavelength between 380 and 700 nanometers, and the most obvious use of that is vision. We can only see in the visible spectrum, but some animals can also see ultraviolet and infrared radiation. Our eyesight's really sensitive to green light. It's got a wavelength of around 550 nanometers, but visible light, remember, makes up only a really tiny portion of the EM spectrum. Most lasers use visible light, and for that we can use it for many things like reading CDs, Blu-ray discs and DVDs. It can be used for range finding in military software and surveying. So a surveying is done when we check the level of a ground before building a house, a road or any other large building project to ensure that it will be safe and it won't subside a lot. Okay, 6 questions there on infrared and visible light. Please pause the video and answer those questions. Okay, question 1. What's the range of infrared waves? They're between 700 nanometers to 1 millimeter. 2 uses of infrared. Well, we've got a few: cooking food, thermal imaging cameras and remote controls. How can thermal imaging cameras tell us the temperature of an object? It detects the wavelength of the infrared wave, then it compares that to other wavelengths of infrared waves and tells you what temperature should be producing a wave of that wavelength. What's the range of length for visible light? Well, that's between 380 and 700 nanometers, a really narrow band. 2 uses of visible light would be vision and reading information from CDs and DVDs. What colour light are humans most sensitive to? We're most sensitive to green light. Okay, our next electromagnetic wave are ultraviolet, and they have the range from 100 to 400 nanometers. Ultraviolet light's got a massive number of uses, causing suntans, used in fluorescent light bulbs, or we can use it to kill germs in dirty water. You might be quite familiar with black lights that are used in nightclubs and arcades to make signs or dies fluoresce without shining visible light on them. You may have had it where you've had a stamp on your hand when leaving somewhere, and then they shine UV light on it, and then that ink shows that the mark's there. We can tag something with that sort of UV sensitive dye to mean it's invisible in normal situations, but visible when UV light shone on it. So our banknotes, like 10 and 20 pound notes, have UV markers printed into them, and it's only genuine notes which will have these correct marks under UV light. So it's a very easy way to check if the note you've got is real or if it's counterfeit. X-rays are our next one, and they've got wavelengths between 10 to the -8 and 10 to the -12 meters, getting to really short wavelengths now. Most common use of X-rays that we know is for looking inside bodies to see if any bones are broken. X-rays pass through most soft materials and only get absorbed by harder materials, which is why X-ray photographs reveal the bones. X-rays are used to look inside many different objects, but again, the main use we'd have is to look at broken bones. They can also be used to identify cancers and some other diseases though. They're also used in airport security scanners, and we can even use them to look at the internal structure of any archaeological finds without damaging the material itself. Okay, 6 questions on ultraviolet waves and X-rays there. Please pause the video and attempt those answers. Okay, question 1. What's the range of ultraviolet waves? It's from 100 to 400 nanometers. 2 uses of ultraviolet, we've got loads. Suntans, fluorescent light bulbs, security on banknotes, killing germs in dirty water. What are UV emitting inks? Why are they used on banknotes, UV emitting inks? They're used to check if it's real, if it cannot be seen in normal light, and forgeries don't use that UV ink. So if you shine a UV light on it and you see that special mark on it, you know it's unlikely to be a forgery. What's the range of length for X-rays? That's between 10 to the minus 8 to 10 to the minus 12 meters. 2 uses of X-rays. Again, we have a few. Medical, which is checking broken bones or detecting cancer. It's also got security at airports, and again, we've got that where we can look at archaeological finds without damaging them. Why do X-rays give an image of bones and not the rest of the body? It's because X-rays pass through soft tissue and get absorbed by the bones, which would give us an image of the bones on a photographic plate underneath it. Okay, our last type of electromagnetic radiation are gamma rays. Any electromagnetic wave with a wavelength less than 10 to the 12 meters is a gamma ray. So they are the shortest wavelength, the highest frequency. This means they carry the most energy. Gamma rays have got so much energy they're used to kill cancer cells. If we can focus rays from lots of different directions on a single point, one area of the body can receive a really, really high dose of gamma rays and the rest of the body only gets a low dose. This is known as radiotherapy. Gamma rays can also be used to detect cancer in the first place. Gamma rays can also be used to sterilize medical equipment and stored food, to detect leaks in oil pipelines, industrial sensors, and to make chemical changes in certain types of crystals. It makes them more valuable. They can sterilize medical equipment because they've got so much energy. They can kill any biological material that's present on that medical equipment. That includes bacteria. So you can wash that, you can make it as clean as you want, but there still may be some residual bacteria on there. If we shine gamma rays on there, irradiate that with gamma rays, it will kill any living material on there and make it suitable for use again. Okay, final 3 questions on gamma rays. Pause the video and answer those 3 questions. Okay, question 1. How long are gamma rays? Gamma rays are any wave that's less than 10 to the minus 12 meters. 2 uses of gamma rays. We've got treating cancer, detecting cancer, sterilizing medical equipment, or detecting leaks in pipelines. Why are gamma rays used to sterilize medical equipment? It's because they'll kill any biological material that remains on that equipment, including the bacteria. That means any of that material will be safe to reuse. It won't infect anybody else. Okay, I hope you found that useful. Plenty of videos available on our YouTube channel for you to use and revise. Thank you very much for listening. See you again soon. Goodbye.